Hello, good morning. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
It's Friday and a beautiful morning. I'm Kaido Kikilu.
Well, perhaps the question will be, where's the party today? Am
I'll
I
tell
marking
you,
it?
I'll tell you though.
Good morning and welcome to the show today.
Oh, just be careful if you're going to any party. Just don't violate the COVID protocol.
Oh, there's Zoom parties these days. You know.
Nah, that's the kind of party he's talking about.
Oh, really?
Because he says it's a party out.
How would
Because
you know?
Some who went for parties ended up in,
Another party.
in police custody.
Oh,
absolutely.
another party. They had another
So
party there.
have to be careful. So,
That's why, even on your birthday, you share virtual cakes.
I think that's
What?
wicked. I think that is just wicked. Don't send me virtual
Virtual
cake.
cake.
Well, I mean, it's...
virtually baked.
Yeah.
Everything is virtual. I mean, just
nice.
send a cake.
No, I think that's diabolical. It's not, that's not.
No, that's the new normal.
That's new abnormal. If you want to give me a cake, give me the real cake. I don't want a virtual cake. Thank you.
Oh dear, what a day it is. And already you could see that a lot of focus about security. Yesterday we had the governor who also lent his voice about security, minimum wage, and goodness. Well, I think Labour had a feel of where they are in terms of the minimum wage, right from the member of the House who was in the studio yesterday, and from the governor. And so you thought, oh boy, okay, it looks as if there may be some hurdle to cross.
Certainly.
Who knows what happens, because Labour themselves are up in arms. They think that, look, if they don't get certain things this particular way, well, it appears as though it's this way or the highway.
I think it's quite instructive, really. They say you have to negotiate because,
Yeah.
well, Labour negotiates, but we know Labour more for protests and all that. So this is, well, you have to go a different route maybe, but clearly the stakes are very high. Because if Labour is saying that, well, we'll remove you from office in some sense, because we are the people, you can imagine how high the stakes are. So the coming months, because, I mean, the bill has passed second reading, there's still the third, and of course the public hearing. So those hearings will be quite huge for Labour.
Guys, my take from all of this so far, and this has been on for a while, is the lack of trust in government at any level. So no matter what promise government makes, it is taking, in fact, there is no salt.
Does that include security too?
Absolutely anything.
Wow.
Anything. I mean, the figures are out there. Ask anyone. The figures are clearly saying that people do not trust any. So if you leave government today and you begin to say some things, speaking from this side and from that side because you don't have any stakes in government anymore, people tend to believe you more because you have been there, done that.
So why didn't they believe when you were there?
But once you are in the institution, you are government.
Isn't that ironic? Because the people chose government, in quotes. So
Yeah.
at what point did they lose that
The
trust?
question you want to ask is, what's the process? We keep talking about the leadership recruitment process. So what's the process of bringing people into government? Not leadership, into government. So that trust deficiency is too high. Too high, guys. So, we have been here discussing so many of these issues when labor unions will come and say, government made a promise to us since 2009, we're still negotiating it, 12 years after? And so government wants to make another promise? People are going to have a problem. So government needs to find a way to communicate to people where they are and how they can be heard.
I think one of the things that could, bridge that gap, and real quick, is the also connected to the leadership recruitment process. If we get our elections right, I'm not saying it will be perfect, but if people feel to a large extent, they go in there, they cast their ballot, and they see, okay, this is who we put in office. How will those kind of people, they won't so very quickly lose trust on those kind of people.
No.
So it will improve.
Because ideally,
Yeah,
the
it
ideal
will.
is I put
Look
you
at
there
other
because I
climes.
trust you.
Yeah.
So
Look
at
at other
least,
climes.
maybe not everybody, clearly, because, when you
No,
go into
of course
elections,
now.
there will be
Look at
people
US
against
elections,
you.
for instance.
Yes, but at least a majority.
Yeah, see
I
how
agree.
attached they are to it because of those people who felt, well, our votes counted. So they religiously followed the former president. And they still do.
Oh, yeah.
So that's an example.
I agree with you guys completely. One of the things that we also want to find out, how this whole thing is playing out is we have reports conducted by governments, all right? And so put a bite to it, then we're still dilly-dallying. It is, and then government after government is not successive. There is no continuity. So you come in, you do your thing, and then another person comes in, jettisons everything you've done, and he does his thing.
Well,
that's another thing.
That's largely the case, but in some cases, there's been some exceptions.
I agree.
Yaradwa's time, he continued some of those projects. I think even this government, they continued some of those projects, and they finished it. Was it Rivers? I'm trying to remember which other states. I think Lagos to some extent.
Those happen. Let me give you two examples. Those things happen, but sometimes they change the coloration. Well, this might not be a perfect example, but look at the Better Life program of Mrs. Babangida.
No, you're going way too far.
Yes, I know. Forgive me.
Go ahead.
Better Life of the Babangida government. When the Abacha government came, same thing, a completely different name. And did it continue in the same light? Take the Operation Feed the Nation of the Obasanjo
Don't go
government.
too far. Look, let's
forgive me.
Look at recent history.
But
Recent
even in recent history, take Lagos.
But,
Fashola into Ambody. What was the continuity? Those are some of the issues. And even yesterday when we asked, day before yesterday when we asked former governor of Kano State, Shekarau, he was also saying the same thing, that continuity in government is a problem. So that is admitted. So we need to be able to do things like that.
Absolutely. So he says fixing, the
electoral
election
process.
And then,
It's
promising and fulfilling those promises, I think it's quite important, because if you say we'll do these things, I mean, see the labor issues, minimum wage, you were saying that they promise we're going to pay the minimum wage, even if it's 100,000, maybe I'm going too far, but you get the point. So if you make those promises, when you get in office, you fulfill them. At least the trust can be kept. And largely, you talked about continuity,
honestly,
which I think is important. So maybe are we legislating for continuity?
Well, there are gradations of continuity. To a large extent, yes, they continue. But there's some of them who come in and say, no, this project, how did you embark on this kind of project? Yeah. It's just like when the government is living. And then what they didn't do in the entire 8 years, they want to do it in 6 months. They start, how do you think an incoming government will continue that kind of policy? No, of course not.
Leading to what's the vision for each state? What's the vision for the nation? So you will not come and put on a project that is not in line with the vision.
Well, that's why it's difficult to come up with that of Lagos, because you know the template that they run. So if you come in there and you feel you don't want to continue, you know certain things could happen. So to that extent, yes, they are following that template.
Exactly.
So that's how that one is. But you know what? Labour, I think they've got another thing coming. Not just Labour now, Nigeria. We'll tell you when you see some of the dailies, which we'll just delve right into. We'll start with Vanguard, and that's where one of those stories is. Even though, yes, the lead one here says, insecurity, FG shoots down talks on mercenaries. We'll be talking about that later in the program today as well. But you see, look at the writers. Vows to come out in full force against insurgents. We'd love to see that. Not a soundbite, but sounds good. Soundbites too can sound good. Says negotiating with bandits suggests weakness. Insists government will not be blackmailed. Reveals meeting with Sheikh Gumi. Niger State government orders closure of schools. Bandits demand 200 million to free 19 people abducted in Niger. And then bandits kill 7 in Kaduna villages, burn property, rustle cattle, banditry taking too much toll on us, traditional rulers tell Buhari. So quite a lot packed in here. Can you imagine? 200 million.
Oh dear.
Now, if somebody demanded 200 million, it tells you around that region, they might have received something like that. That's how they price themselves, or that's how they might have been priced. Remember when they say, well, there was no negotiation? There was no negotiation. They're fixing the tab on this. There's a price tag, 200 million. And somebody just wake up somewhere, and then you go and say, I want 1 billion for this. Even your brain will say, no, I'm not sure this works well with me demanding this. But you do certain because you think, I might have done this before and it worked.
Yeah,
okay,
even if you don't get as much, at least you get something close. And I think if there's anything, we've sort of been taken for a fool in this whole fight, because there's some things you hear that they don't sound logical, but I mean, we've come to take them as normal. But I know that there's still a lot more going on than what we see on the front pages.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. But this one at the, before I get to the bottom strip, just stay right there. Look above that lead story on Vanguard by your right-hand corner. FG confirms return of subsidy as PPPRA puts fuel price at, wait for it, 212 naira 61 kobo per litre. That's right, 212 naira 61 kobo per litre. Remember, you thought 178 was huge or 170. 212 naira 61 kobo per litre. Deal with that, guys. What do you think? There you go.
No, we're all dealing with it, Chairman.
So you see that?
Goodness.
200, yeah,
That's still subsidized.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what we're paying. Well, for some
Return
people,
of subsidy.
170.
No, wait a minute, guy. At 221 naira 61 kobo per litre, federal government of Nigeria is still subsidizing petrol.
Well, you started out saying people don't trust government when they say certain things. So could this be one of the reasons then?
No, when it's bad news, people seem to say. When it's unpleasant news, but wait a minute. I'm saying, wait a minute.
I know, it will take a while to wrap your head around it. So
You have
can
a
imagine,
minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, you have
We're
the whole
waiting.
thing.
1 minute.
No, time is going. We have to
So
continue.
you can imagine if you're this shell-shocked. How about what other Nigerians?
212 naira per litre, and it's still subsidized.
Well, if you listen to the Minister of Petroleum, the head of the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, head of NNPC, when you talk about subsidy, honestly, when I listen to the responses about whether subsidy has been removed or not, it's usually not a clear-cut yes. It's usually, well, subsidy has been removed, and then you hear some explanation about the FX, how NNPC is the only one that can bring in, refined petrol and the rest, and you just get a sense that, well, subsidy
Because
is
even
still
at
there.
that time, they still tell us we have enough to flood the market. Nobody's got any reason to hoard it. And then they say, look, there was no differential for the month of March, yet you have people who are hoarding the product. And Labour is protesting, hoarding the product. Guys, you don't have to do these things. We'll read this, of course. It will develop as the days go by. We won't see land for ranching, Southeast governors. That's at the bottom strip, though. That much you heard yesterday as well. Mr. and Miss, it's a Friday. Oh, Mr. So you're enjoying a bottle of beer and sitting close to the window. It's an excuse to make passes at girls. Do I move my base to the beer parlor then? No, can't you take jokes? That's Mrs. just telling Mr. Well, we would like to read that to see. Well, look at the back page now. Vanguard Sports. Mosepe set to become CAF president. Pinnick jostles for FIFA Council seat. And you got several other stories. Ronaldo must go, says former Juve president. Wow. That's Vanguard today.
Well, the Nigerian Tribune leads with security, or do I say insecurity? Buhari, NSA, talk tough. We will be more ruthless with criminals. Anyone found with illegal AK-47 will be shot, President affirms. Traditional rulers at Villa lament toll of banditry on their subjects. FG not weak, won't negotiate with bandits. 2,403 insurgents killed since 2015. That's coming from the NSA. How Ironsi Gowon Obasanjo crippled traditional institution, laid foundation for national insecurity. Sultan, we're ready to support FG, PDP governors. And I think that was one of the highlights yesterday, saying, partisanship aside, we need to fix this issue. So it's on page 2. It's quite a lot to chew on, which is why it's a lead story. So it will be an interesting read, I can tell. And right on top of that nameplate, you see how 2023 politics is tempting high rate of, or rather, let me take that again. How 2023 politics tempting high rate of dollars are encouraging drug trafficking. So there you go. That's something to also chew on. And let me just take one more from the front page. Inadequate funding, logistics constraining effective Amotekun operation in Southwest. It's on page 2. So, oh dear. Quick look at sports page. No plans to extend Ronaldo's contract. It's coming from Juve. That re-echoes what Chamberlain said earlier. So
where's he going to go?
that's a big question.
US? MLS?
Well, that's usually the next best destination, but
Because he can't get back to the Premier League.
he can't.
Oh, I'm not sure he wants to. He's been there.
It'd be good to go back to Manchester United just to
Oh.
bid them farewell. Thank you for the time. But that's a Nigerian tribute for you this morning.
So let's go to the Guardian newspaper while these boys talk sports. FG talks
Don't worry,
tough.
you'll do a fuel subsidy later. You'll go to buy fuel, won't you? No problem. No worries.
The Guardian newspaper leads with this one. FG talks tough as bandits kill over 40 in 1 week. You know, how many days ago was it that we saw a report on the front page of, I think, was it a Nigerian Tribune, that says more than almost 2,000 people were killed in 2020 in Kaduna alone.
Yeah.
And now this. Well, the riders restates order to shoot at sight anyone found with AK-47. Banditry becoming too much. Traditional rulers tell Buhari. Will not negotiate with insurgents, NSA says, and rules out engagement of mercenaries. The story is on page 6 of the paper, of course. The picture you see there is that of some traditional rulers and religious leaders at the villa yesterday. Oh, okay. So it was almost 1,000. But the report that I saw, maybe I'll have to double check, said 1,900 and something or there, but that's what I saw. But I stand corrected. Second, well, this other one, the story right under the picture you see there, enrollees decry extortions and queues return to NIN centers.
Did the queues ever leave, though?
What happened to all the 200 and whatever registered?
I can tell you what happened. I've said it time and again. Maybe I'll just say it one more time. So it was decentralized, right? And it was time to pay those who would enroll people. And you see 30 naira per enrollee, that's how much you'll be paid. And you know how tricky these things might be. So imagine you just enroll at least, at the very best, 10 people per day. That's 300 naira, right? And for a month, how much is that? 9,000 naira. Imagine how much you have to pay for transport in Lagos alone. So you can imagine people saying, well, I don't want to have anything to do with that, okay? So that's one of the issues that this is facing.
Wow. Check out the riders. Lagos residents cough out between 5,000 and 10,000 naira just to register for my social security number, with which government is supposed to take care of me.
So who's at fault here, really? The giver or the taker of the incentive? Let's say bribe. Or...
Okay, second rider in
Whoa,
Enugu.
whoa, whoa. Did you just dodge that?
You're not going to
I'm still numb.
Oh, boy.
I'm still numb just by thinking about it. There are banks that get your biometrics.
Yeah.
There are telco centers all over the nation that get you. Anyway, NIMC threatens
See why talking
offenders.
sports is good.
It just eases the
Calms you
tension.
down.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll rather do movies, guys, please. NIMC threatens offenders, release phone numbers for complaints. Well, the story is right there on the inside pages, and as we often say, government, you have your job cut out for you. Story continues on page 6. Few others there related. INEC may not make NIN compulsory for voter registration. Perhaps also seeing the challenges people are facing?
But it's still a probability.
May not, yes.
And they may.
Well, they have to be careful because they too would have felt the pulse. And then if you're asking people to make it, and you know when it comes to elections, nobody wants to hear why you tell them not to come and vote, having gotten their voter cards. If I got my voter card, you tell me not to vote, and then you can imagine how elections are, the kind of emotions that come with it. And you're talking about the larger percentage of Nigerians. Can they even enforce it if they say yes?
If they say, if we should uphold what INEC has, or rather is contemplating, we have to do the same for JAM and for WAEC.
I think JAM had that issue.
Yeah,
as well.
JAM had it at the time.
That was,
House
yes,
of Reps.
then.
I think they told them, hey, hold on.
That was then.
But
Will
now
it
I think
still-
I insist that I'm bringing it up again now.
Okay. And these people are still having these challenges at the NIN centers?
Yep. Yeah.
Well, government, as we say, you have your job cut out for you. And this one on page 7, how we lost over 500 million naira So crisis by who? Seriki Fulani. 500 million naira losses. Well, the details again we say are on the inside pages. That's the Guardian newspaper this
All
week.
right, look at News Direct. Federal salary structure can't be imposed on states. That's ascribed to the NGF, the front page of News Direct. And so, remember when we said Labour might have to contend with some other items now. So, if this is coming from NGF, wow, need we say more?
Are we shocked, though?
There you go. So, so that means the honourable member who said, you know, we asked him yesterday, so whose interest are you protecting if the governor doesn't ask you to do this? And then he said, the system. So is this the system speaking now?
Looks like it.
Oh, okay. That's News Direct.
For Daily Trust, the lead story, Borno elders, experts to FG, hire mercenaries to end Boko Haram. Will be harder on criminals, Buhari. Negotiation, sign of weakness, Mongno. NSA speaks our minds, officers. But then the people seems are calling for mercenaries. You've heard the governor of Borno State time and again, not once, not twice, saying, well, we might need some help. And now you see Borno elders and experts. And remember the NSA saying, well, maybe this is about national pride in some sense. And he tried to, explain that, but clearly this conversation doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And you see, despite poor state of schools, 41 billion naira UBEC fund unaccessed. You wonder why? More details on page 4.
But you spoke about interagency rivalry as well.
Oh, yes.
That's a huge problem. Still a huge problem.
Despite what the president has said over and over again, that they should collaborate.
I think it should be some form of healthy rivalry, but then the challenge is how do you draw the line? So maybe
but this one is
there
an
shouldn't be
impediment
anyone
now.
at all.
Yeah, as he put it out there, it's a huge problem. He talked about having been in government for a long time, so that military mentality pervades the military or the services, and so they need to get it off.
Cool. And finally, you see FG confirms mild side effects of COVID-19 vaccine. Page 6 of a Daily Trust.
Well, that's from that. The details on the inside
Mild
pages.
side effects.
You have to define mild. Blueprint newspaper is next, and it leads with this one. Amidst rising insecurity, NSA vows FG won't hire mercenaries, negotiate with bandits and terrorists. Says it's a sign of weakness, threatens to crush criminals. Lecturer students abducted in Edo, Niger, shot schools. PDP governors on same page with FG, ascribed to Tambuwal. Bandits regrouping in Kubo Hills, Kaduna, according to a senator. Gunmen kill policeman, injure another in Benue. That's what you have on the front page right there, lead story. Iransi, Gawan, Obasanjo shut us out of governance that is ascribed to traditional rulers.
Well, take a look at Leadership Friday. Manufacturing sector struggles despite FG's 1 trillion naira grant. So that's a huge one that you're seeing there. So manufacturing sector they've been coming up or talking about this for a while now. Even before we signed on to AFCTA, they wanted government to put in place certain things so that we are not on the back foot compared to other African countries when after kicks in, because that point of origin matter was a huge bone of contention. But now, look at that. 1 year after COVID-19, the manufacturing sector struggles despite FG's 1 trillion naira grants. Production value drops from 7.38 trillion naira to 2.36 trillion naira.
Wow.
Yeah. Unsold goods hit 302.22 billion naira. That's at 83% household cuts consumption. Yeah, 83% of households cut their consumption. More governors received jabs, flag off vaccine in states. Experts differ on safety of AstraZeneca vaccine. So it goes on and on. So it's that figure is incredibly important. If 83% of households are cutting that, then you can imagine. Don't forget to look at Daily Times as well. Gunmen abduct teachers, students. Okay, you looked at that as well. So there you go. That is a look at some of the dailies here this morning. Quite a lot to unpack. So just hang on. We will be right back.
For this particular AstraZeneca vaccine, over 20,000 people were involved in phase 3. Phases 1, 2, 3 are different based on the number of subjects. Phase 1 has fewer people. Phase 2 has more than phase 1. Phase 3 has about 20-something thousand plus people. And when you have 20-something thousand people and they say 10 incidences or 10 side effects or whatever, statistically or epidemiologically, you categorize as risk or benefits rather outweigh the risk. There is no medicine that doesn't have side effects, especially when it's going through development. It is whether the benefits outweigh the risk. And the conclusion is that from all indications, quality, safety, efficacy, the benefits outweighed the side effects. There are side effects. It may be, soreness or tenderness in the arm. It may be fever. There are few cases of people that have allergy, to things, that showed allergic reaction. So everybody that is taking the vaccine must be around for about 45 minutes for the nurse, the doctor to watch to make sure that everything is fine.
All right, welcome back. So, yes, we'll be talking about some associated attendant issues that have come up as a result of this. We've got two gentlemen joining us this morning. Dr. Mukhtar Mohammed is a National Incident Manager, PTF, on COVID-19, joining us from our studios in Abuja. We also do have Dr. Riyad Mohammed, who is a consultant family physician and field epidemiologist, who joins us from Zamfara Vazum. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today on the program. Dr. Mohammed, Dr. Mukhtar Mohammed, let me start with you on this one. Well, I know you may have seen some of those information that's making the rounds about some countries that have at the moment just said, okay, hold on, we're suspending this for a bit as a result of the effects, the results that we are getting. So what is government's thinking, or what is your thinking, having seen that now?
Good morning, Chamberlain. Thank you very much for having me on this program. I think in the last 24 hours, we have received this disturbing news, which for us is not really very much disturbing. Considering the considering what is happening in some of the European countries where they have suspended or they have stopped using Oxford AstraZeneca for some reasons that are not yet confirmed. In all of these issues, it is to consider benefit versus the risk. And what they have noticed is that they have administered almost 5 million doses of this vaccine collectively in the European countries. And only 30 cases so far have reported this incidence of thromboembolic incidences that have been reported. And that is really very small compared to even the incidence of the disease itself. So if you look at even in non-vaccinated population, the risk is higher, or the incidence is higher in the general population than it is even in the vaccinated population. Therefore, that is not an established basis. They are still investigated. They cannot conclusively say that the thromboembolic attacks are due to the effect of the vaccination. So it is something that is giving the world some little concern, but for the scientific world, I think it is something not to worry about. For us in Nigeria, we will continue to administer these vaccines. Our documentation so far has shown that it is safe to use. And we will continue to roll out this Oxford AstraZeneca vaccination. However, we will continue to monitor people for symptoms. Any person who has received this vaccine and has some symptoms should please use the MedApp application and report the symptoms. Our staff and the state governments are also trained to monitor and report on these symptoms and any untoward side effect that has been reported. So it is something that we'll continue to monitor closely. We will continue to document the findings, and we will continue to provide the public with the general information. If we have any information or if we have any established fact that something is wrong or something is not good for the general public, the government will not hesitate to take the necessary actions.
You know, some of the people who spoke to us yesterday when they had this part of information from those countries that have held on was that they said the communication they got from government was that, look, it's perfect. They didn't even think that there was any side effect, either 1 or 2%, until maybe they heard this piece of information. And the news is just Norway, Denmark, Iceland, they suspended this AstraZeneca COVID shots. And the report there says after blood clots were reported. And so, in fact, there was a case that there was a death recorded, and so they had to just hold on. So that is the information that came through as of yesterday.
Yeah, that is correct. And I think they did take that position. They mentioned it is a precautionary measure. It is not an established fact that the vaccine is associated with that thromboembolic attack, or what you call the clot formation. They are still doing some investigation, but they provided a clear statement that the incidence of blood clot disease or the thromboembolic disease in the general population in Europe is higher than what was found in the population that has been vaccinated. So that is to tell you clearly that the vaccine itself is not a risk for having thromboembolic attack. Epidemiologically, we know that. However, it is a source of concern if some people have reported that symptoms, and it needs to be evaluated. And not only is the vaccine being administered in Europe, but all other countries, over 50 countries now, that are administering Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine have been awakened and will continue to report their findings, so that we'll have a global data to fall back on to say that not only in Europe, but in all of these other countries, these are the symptoms and side effects that we are noticing. And it is based on that any scientific decision can be taken. But for now, their action is precautionary. It is not based on a cause-effect relationship, and that there is no established fact to show that vaccination with this particular vaccine, or even with the batch of the vaccine that they are talking about, has a higher risk than in people who are vaccinated with other vaccines or not vaccinated at all.
Okay, Dr. Riyad Mohammed, what do you think of this?
Yeah, thank you and good morning, everyone. I would like to start with the issue that, all drugs truly have side effects, similar to immunization and vaccinations. So this is really not an unexpected event. All drugs and immunizations do have side effects. But, the reason why Denmark suspended its vaccination at the moment is trying to assess the causality or the relationship between these occurring events in the country and the vaccination holding on at the moment. So it is not really a new scenario per se, but it's good to understand that, all drugs are new programs. Pharmacovigilance aspects of regulatory bodies has to look into some of these events to see whether it is truly associated with the vaccination or it is a coincident event. Looking at the country, the risk of coagulation in the country is truly high, even without immunization. So, but then the regulatory bodies may want to look into the immunization program to see whether there is a causality relationship between these occurring events and the ongoing COVID-19 vaccination. So I think I will say that it is not an unexpected scenario in the sense that the country has the mandate to investigate and find if there is truly a positive causality relationship between the event and between the immunization and the occurring events. Thank you, and over.
Yeah, well, we'll have to call the names in full all the time because both of you are Dr. Mohammed. So, Dr. Mukhtar Mohammed, what we are aware of from the NPHCDA is that the batch number of the COVID-19 that is said to be problematic is different from our own. That one is labeled as 5,300. Do you have any idea what batch we collected? What's the batch number that we collected? Perhaps that will make people feel safer.
To name, but yesterday when the event was reported, I discussed with the ED on NPHCDA. Certainly, it is not. We did not receive the same batch as the ones that are implicated now, or the ones that are being investigated in Europe. We received a completely different batch here in Nigeria. And as you are aware, also, immediately this vaccine arrived, NAFDAC took a sample of this vaccine, the different batches that arrived, and also do their due diligence to ensure that the vaccine is safe and also the content or the ingredients of the vaccine are exactly what is mentioned to be in the document.
Right. I think it would be quite important to also maybe issue a rejoinder and say, well, this is the batch we got in Nigeria, such that people can know. But yeah, would expect that clearly. But in terms of side effects, because I mean, both of you have said drugs usually have side effects. People react differently. And I want to believe that we've been gathering data on those who have been administered the AstraZeneca vaccine in Nigeria. So what have you found out specifically for Nigerians who have gotten these vaccines so far? What kind of side effects did they show? Is it headache? Is it mild pain? Just so people can know the kind of information you have, because you also said earlier that it's important to give Nigerians general information really about what is going on. So what are those side effects you have noticed so far?
Okay, so certainly looking at the strategic leadership now that has taken the vaccine, who have not administered so many doses. Mostly now it is the strategic leadership. If you look at the Abuja, the honorable ministers, His Excellency, Mr. President and Vice President, members of the PTF, some healthcare staff, in some locations in FCT. So the side effects generally are the same. The first one is not really a side effect, but really is an effect of the injection itself, which is you have some pain in the site, which can persist for a few hours to maybe a few days. You will have that pain. And that is just experienced not with this vaccine, but with any other intramuscular vaccination that is done. The second one is also the side effect of injecting a foreign body, particularly if it contains some protein into the body. It can elicit fever. You can have some mild grade fever, the general feeling of unwell, headache. It can affect maybe your sleep pattern, but they are all mild feelings. Specifically, when we looked at, we were sharing experiences, among the ministers. Most of them is just some mild fever, headache, and then, the general feeling of unwell. But we know that some of the side effects will include mild symptoms of the disease itself. That is, you can have cold, common cold or flu symptoms, sneezing, running nose, and sometimes with some little cough. But the important thing is that these symptoms should not persist. They should not exceed more than 24 to 48 hours. And we have also everyone who has been immunized or who has received this vaccination has been told to report any symptoms that persist, for more than 24 hours. So generally, when you take this vaccination, we will watch you immediately for at least 15 to 20 minutes, at least to make sure that you don't have any adverse effect. And what we fear most, is what we call anaphylactic shock. That is, you introduce an injection or something into somebody's body and he goes into shock. And that happens within a very short time. That has not been reported at all. But these symptoms, are symptoms that will go away by themselves, or maybe you just take some small paracetamol, that will make them go away. So Nigerians should be aware that if you take this vaccination, it is likely that some people will have these very mild symptoms. But if the symptoms persist, or if someone has concern about them, they should not hesitate to report these symptoms, because that is the only way that we will scientifically gather the information about the side effects of this vaccination.
So I imagine that just less than 100 people have gotten this vaccine so far. By the way, that's still for you, Dr. Mukhtar Mohammed. So how many people have reported symptoms persisting? You say if it persists for beyond 24 or 48 hours. So out of the less than 100 that have been vaccinated, how many people reported persistent symptoms?
So these symptoms are now reported at the state level. So far, I'm not aware of any person who has reported any adverse event that has persisted for more than 24 hours. But my information may not be up to date because NPHCDA is the one closely tracking that information. As of yesterday evening, I'm not aware. That has not been reported. And so we can say that of the few Nigerians that have been vaccinated now, none of the persons has reported a severe or a major side effect of concern.
Well, let's go back to Dr. Riyad Mohammed now. This information from Europe is coming at the same time we received the Africa CDC report on vaccine perceptions survey. And one of those things, says that 60% of people surveyed believe that COVID-19 vaccine is unsafe. And then we have this information. How does this strike you?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think I must say that to us health personnel, it is really not an unexpected finding. If you look at the trend generally, the perceptions of the public perception on both the COVID and this vaccination is really an undesired kind of perception. In the beginning, even the whole COVID-19, people tried to associate it as a scam. And over time, the trend came down, and people somehow accepted it as a new normal. So it's not really an unexpected finding that even the vaccine itself, controversies will come around it. So I think this is really a finding that is really not an unexpected finding. But to say the fact, the general hesitancy of vaccines will cause a setback in trying to acquire the herd immunity. So that is to say that we really need to do more in terms of public awareness and campaigns, so that we can try to enlighten people on the need of this vaccination. So generally, people tend to associate this vaccine and even the COVID to a kind of scam in the country. Reason being either to get fund from somewhere or or other factors that the population think is related to population control, or kind of a kind of a conspiracy against our population. But then the fact that this finding of African CDC is coming at this time when there is suspension of vaccination in other countries will really have an impact in the overall acceptance of the vaccination in this country.
Well, Dr. Mohammed, you know, I think you may need to expatiate a little more on this information, dissemination, awareness, and perhaps communication of this. Because take a look at this. In that same report, we have it that more than half of respondents surveyed feel that the threat from coronavirus is exaggerated and that it therefore does not pose as great a risk as some have suggested. This opinion was particularly prevalent in countries such as Nigeria. 67% of people surveyed believe this. So if this has been on, and by the way, of course, you know that this report came, this survey was conducted in the middle of last year. Before now, when we are having this report, this opinion about the vaccine. So what else has government not done that ought to be done so that people can take this vaccine and we can achieve this herd immunity you just talked about?
Yeah, I think government on its own is trying its best. But if you look at the general, if you look at the population of understanding of some of these things in our part of the country, you will understand that we really need to do a lot. We may need to do more. Thinking of it or the way forward, I think government must have in place all the means through which population can be enlightened, just like we're doing now. Now, you know, media enlightenment is very important, via radio, via video and all that, because a lot of people tend to listen and listen to the video, the media and all that. But then one-on-one discussion, group discussion, meeting with traditional leaders, religious leaders, to involve them in disseminating this information is very vital to the success of this campaign. So the government, I think, is doing a lot, but maybe there is more need to be done. Both the government, both personal individuals, both the hospitals, both the traditional institutions, stakeholders. So all of us have to come as one to try to create this public awareness and public enlightenment.
Well, Dr. Mukhtar, this report, it really underscores this vaccine hesitancy, because if 60% of the people are saying, yes, we trust that COVID vaccine is safe, and 59% say, no, we strongly disagree, it is not safe. That makes your job a lot more challenging. How is government going to be approaching this now?
Yeah, certainly. So let me first address the issue of perception surveys. Perception of people, our experience with surveys on perception is that people tend to over-exaggerate or go to the extreme of responses. That may not be the true finding, in reality. So the question asked is, do you think that the response or the COVID-19 response, is important or something similar to that? So the kind of response we get is people usually go to the extreme. You hardly find people staying in the middle of the ground. Now, it is a challenge in the sense that this new information that is coming now is coming at a time when vaccine hesitancy is getting momentum or whatever in the country. We have started with the strategic leadership and people are accepting the vaccines. So negative news like this will definitely adversely affect the efforts of government and what is happening now. So certainly we have to really buckle up, and we have to intensify our campaign and try to enlighten the public for them to understand that all issues of concerns are properly addressed by the government, and to give assurance, of the safety of this vaccine. But we're not just giving a blanket safety assurance. We have to look at the fact. We have to look at the figures. We have to look at the numbers that are being reported regarding the side events, and also communicate same to the public. So it is important, to continue this sensitization, to continue to engage the public and provide all the information that is required out there so that people have informed decisions, so that people are properly aware of what is going on. And then that way you will realize that people will dispel any fake news or any conspiracy theory that is out there.
All right, we'll take a look at some more of this data and perhaps some questions that people are concerned about when we return for both of you in just a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back with Dr. Mukhtar. Let's take a look at some more of this data, which was put out as well. It says 64% of the respondents did mention TV as one of their most trusted sources for information about COVID-19, followed by radio at 51%, online sources 41%, health bodies 23%, and government sources 18%. It means that, well, look, I know you say that they usually go to the extreme. Is this one equally on the extreme?
Well, Chamberlain, if you look at the data, who is providing the information on the television? Who is providing information on the social media? So if you look at these answers that we call, they are not mutually exclusive. If you look at the percentages, you can see that they overlap. And that means that people are referring to multiple sources. Yes, if you look at what the government is doing, a lot of it is being televised. You look at the activities of the Presidential Task Force. They were having daily briefings. Now it is reduced to weekly briefing. At least that is covered live, by television channels, including yours. If you look at appearances in the radio programs, I think not only in Abuja, but also the states, if you look at the efforts the state governments are doing. So this 18% really is buried in all the others that you have seen in the response. So for us, when interpreting this data, we know that looking at the percentages that have overlapped, we know that it means that they are not mutually exclusive.
Okay, so give us your own picture then. What is government working with in terms of data or degradation or perception about vaccine hesitancy so you know how to proceed with it for those who are naysayers?
So actually for us, we used to look at the data on a weekly basis. We were having what is called the NOI polls, and we were getting reports from most of the states, and we were monitoring the trend over time. This has now been continued, and the picture that we are seeing is not different from the results we have on this Africa CDC survey. The good thing to say is that we have seen an improved awareness. We have seen more positive acceptance of the response and also of the vaccination. We've also seen a greater friendliness towards the response and the measures that the government has taken. So the government will continue to engage the media, will continue to engage important stakeholders and opinion leaders. We are meeting with traditional rulers, we are meeting with religious leaders, and they are all providing information to the public. We are also engaging key opinion leaders in communities. With this vaccination drive, each state government is also setting up its own risk communication structure where they engage the communities, they engage the gatekeepers, and they make sure that people are aware of the exercise and that the information is disseminated properly.
Okay. Well, Dr. Riyad, let me just quickly bring this to you. There's so much data to look at here, but still referring back to the cases we saw in Europe, oh, there you see top 5 most common reasons given for not wanting to take a new COVID-19 vaccine. You see, top on that list is, I do not trust the COVID-19 vaccine. That's from the survey of Africa CDC. The second one is, I do not believe that the virus exists. I mean, we've seen skeptics time and again. And then third, I am concerned about the safety of the vaccine. And the fifth one, I do not have sufficient information to make a decision. And, these are some of the major reasons people say, well, I think I'm going to pass on this one. I mean, Dr. Mohammed has largely talked about the data the government is working with, how government, tries to put out information out there. But I just quickly want to touch on the cases we have seen in Europe. That's for Dr. Riyad Mohammed. I know this might be a challenge, but this is for Dr. Riyad. Okay, so quickly on the cases we've seen in Europe, talking about blood clots, coagulation, and all that. Just how regular do you find those cases? Because some are saying that this might not even be related to the vaccine. So just how much do you find these cases in people normally, and then for people who have taken the vaccine?
Yeah, thank you for that question. You know, the incidence of blood clots that has been found in Europe that led to the suspension of the vaccine. Looking at the data, over 11 million jabs have been given. 11 million of their population have been given a vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine. But looking at the data, I think it's about 50 personnel that presented with this clotting problem. And but the fact that one nurse died as a result of coagulation, that was the reason why they had to suspend and do a causality assessment to find out if there is really a relationship between this rising incidence of coagulation and COVID-19 vaccination, which is normal for every country implementing this COVID-19 vaccination. They have to set surveillance in place so that they look at the common occurrences of any event. And then if there are rising cases of any event, then the country has that mandate to do a causality assessment to find whether there is any causal relationship between the two. So, but looking at Denmark now, you know, 50 in 11 million is not really that high a figure, because the common disease of that country, common disease entity of that country is more of chronic diseases like diabetes, hypertension, and all that. So the risk of coagulopathies or coagulatory diseases is really high among that population, not like the population we have in Africa and all that. So their normal incidence is really up to that level. I have not calculated the incidence of the cases they had, but I think it's about 50 persons that reported coagulopathy problem, and I think the regulatory body had to suspend it to do a causality assessment. But then, at the moment now, there is no link that it is the COVID-19 vaccination that caused the bleeding and the coagulation problem. So I think the suspension is for 2 weeks so that the country can conduct an assessment to see whether there is a relationship. But it's a fact that we should all know that Denmark, among some of their some of the diseases, coagulopathy is really high in that country.
Right.
Thank you, and over.
Okay, so Dr. Mukhtar, I mean, when this news hit, there were a lot of people, maybe skeptics, especially, putting out messages saying, "I told you so. And this is what I was telling you about the vaccine." And naturally, they wanted to hear the government say, "We will suspend, vaccination process while we look into these, figures." But it seems the government is saying, well, we're going the way of the UK, Spain, and even France, who say they are continuing with this rollout of the AstraZeneca vaccine particularly. So in terms of protection, just to put out the information, just how much protection will this vaccine provide? Because for some other people, they were thinking, maybe not the AstraZeneca, I'll probably go with the Pfizer, and that was a bone of contention for them. So help people understand just the level of protection this might offer.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. You are right. Some of the skeptics, and that's why we are not happy, because it is coming at a time when the vaccination drive in Nigeria is gaining momentum. And of course, we know that we have the skeptics, people who have expressed doubt, people who come out, to publicly mention why are we making this choice of even AstraZeneca, why not other vaccines? Certainly, it will set us back a little. But it is gratifying for us to know that based on the data we have, based on the evidence that is before us, we do not have any serious concern. We do not have any concern at all, to halt, to ponder, or to even, suspend the use of this vaccine. What we'll continue to do is to intensify our effort at surveillance, to encourage people to report any of these symptoms that they have observed, and we'll measure it to see what are the adverse events that are of interest or that are, we consider high risk that will need to be looked at in more detail. And again, let me just reiterate what my brother, Dr. Riyad, mentioned, regarding what happened in Europe. The incidence of this thromboembolic disease, what you call the blood clotting disease, among people who are vaccinated is less than the incidence of the thromboembolic disease in the general population. So that is to tell you that even based on the data they have, it is not a risk at all. But they have said they are suspending for some time, and they really want to perform a more rigorous exercise to ensure that, the statement is verified, and they will continue with their vaccination. So for Nigeria, I would want to encourage the public. Yes, we know that there are a lot of skepticism. We know that the whole COVID exercise, not only in Nigeria, but globally, we have people who have expressed doubts. We have a lot of fake news that is filtering from any source. And people that are originating this, will now post back and tell people, well, we told you so. We suspected this. And this includes some prominent people and some important media or, organizations that have a very large reach. So we will continue to tackle them. We'll continue to address the issues.
Right.
Regarding the NOI polls also, we will target these responses. We will look at the reasons why people not skeptical, they are skeptical or they are not taking the vaccine. We will address all of these reasons programmatically. We will try to target the population, and we will try to provide them with the necessary fact and information so that they will be better informed.
But okay, Doctor, as we wind down now, what's going to be done, or how will you approach, for instance, if Kogi says, I'm not going to take the vaccine and I'm not going to receive it, what happens?
Now, the vaccine, if you look at it, the rollout, nobody is being forced to take the vaccine. It is willingly, it is when you understand the benefit outweighs the risk, that is when you go forward and you collect your vaccination. We'll continue to provide the information out there. We'll continue to counter any fake news or any reasons people might have or any reasons that necessitate this vaccine hesitancy. We will address them. And I know that Nigerians are very reasonable. People will look at the fact, they will look at the evidence, and they will look at the information, particularly health workers and important community influencers. It's important we measure what we mention to the public. If we do not have any verified information, I think it will be very counterproductive for us to mount a podium or to use a media avenue or channel and provide fake information to our public. So we will continue to provide the right information so that people make that informed decision by themselves.
If you're not forcing people to do it, why is government then saying that if people don't get vaccinated, they won't fly, they won't be able to travel?
Well, this is not our own making, but we are all making a projection because, you see, when you look at what is happening, the trend that is going on globally, you realize that in not far future, such restrictions will come into being. It's about public good. It's about public safety. Take, for example, people going for international sports festival or even religious duties, such as going on pilgrimage. The receiving countries will have to be very careful. They will have to be very prudent to ensure that people do not bring new infections to them, people do not bring variants, of COVID-19 that, will devastate or reverse the gains that they have made. So it is just a common reason that you will say, yes, that is the direction where the world is going. And people without vaccination certificate may not be allowed to fly or to go to other countries. Right now, we have seen it. Almost all the countries are requiring people going into their countries to have a COVID negative result. It's just a safety measure that any responsible government will take to protect its population.
Well, isn't it premature? Because, I mean, we've got 2 years. That's the timeline the government has given. We received less than 4 million. You're targeting, there's 80 more million expected, and then the population to vaccinate is huge. So we can't meet up because if that kicks in immediately, or when is that going to kick in, by the way? Maybe I should start with that.
So the number of vaccines that we're expecting is being worked out.
No, I'm sorry. I mean,
right now, with
this policy of government.
Also the National Primary Health.
Pardon me, let me correct that. I mean, when you say that people can't travel, when is that supposed to kick in?
We don't know. We can't say, but that is why the countries, everyone is racing towards vaccinating its people. Because as we see with this vaccine politics or the vaccine nationalism, we see that the developed countries have taken and kept the vaccines to themselves. And the purpose, what we can allude from here, is to say that they are trying to vaccinate as many people of their population as they can. And if they do that, they will be afraid, to have any new importations of cases into their country. And that is why we also have to expand our drive. We also have to compete to make sure that within a reasonable time frame, we're able to achieve that herd immunity. Because without it, we know that some of these countries will not allow Nigerians, to travel to their countries. So we're looking at really the rollout between now and end of 2022. We have received this 4 million. Hopefully in the next few weeks, we expect some additional maybe 18 million from the same source and also an additional 16 million from a different source. We are not going to restrict ourselves to just using the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine because in this, there is really an advantage of using different vaccines so that you can fight the different strains that are coming. And even the vaccines themselves will continue to be modified, to address this issue of the new variants.
All right, then Dr. Mukhtar Mohammed, National Incident Manager, PTF on COVID-19, as well as Dr. Riyad Mohammed, a field epidemiologist. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us today on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Thank you for having us.
All right, then. We're back in a moment. Stay with us.
The service chiefs, led by the Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Rabo, arrive at the office of the Oyo State Governor in Ibadan, the state capital. They are received by the Secretary to the State Government, Oluban Wadioshu, and ushered into the Expo Chambers. The Deputy Governor, Raul Falaniyo, hosted the delegation as they immediately settled down for the business of the day, which includes intimating the state government on their mission.
Having been charged to take all measures necessary to address the varying security challenges across the country, in partnership with other security agencies, we found it very expedient to undertake this visit. And we have equally recognized the centrality of the state governments in this regard.
Of importance to the state government is the rising cases of insecurity in some border towns in the state. The Deputy Governor highlights these challenges and requests for more troops in the identified communities and flashpoints across the state.
We need more troops for surveillance. More than what is on ground, we need more troops. And we will appreciate if the chief of health staff can equally come into our assistance by air surveillance.
The Chief of Defense Staff gives assurance that the command will look into the request of deploying more troops to the troubled border towns.
What I can assure you is that peace and security will be ensured not only in Oyo State but across the land in Nigeria.
As the service chiefs depart the Oyo State Governor's office to continue further engagement with troops and other stakeholders, the days ahead will be indicative of a new dawn where hopefully words will be matched with actions for a safer nation. Bukola Oriowu, Channels Television News.
Always so many issues to contend with as far as Nigeria is concerned. But as you can see in the welcoming slide, Right Honorable Alina Abba joins us this morning, former Speaker, House of Representatives. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. One of the things that comes to me first, even taken from the previous conversation, is that the trust quotient in government is so low. And consequently, it would seem like anything that comes from any government official is untrustworthy. How do you think we can even begin to take that on? Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay, yes. I was asking that with the trust quotient of government so low among the people, the report, the Africa CDC report, says that 18% of the people that were surveyed, only 18% of the people trust government sources. Anyone that comes from government, people don't trust. How in the universe can government govern the people that do not trust them?
Well, this is a very difficult question to answer, but I will attempt to answer it from what I know. I believe that there must be some degree of trust between those who govern and those who are governed. This is basic. People must trust people who govern them. And the people who govern must at all times do whatever it takes to elicit trust from the people. Once that trust, is lost, then the basis for governance by whatever people, is lost. If people have been living under the same condition, which is abysmal over the years, if people have been living under such a condition, are still not hopeful that they cannot find succor, if the polity under which people live has not given them hope in the sense that political mobility has become very, very restricted because of the nature of the system today. We have a system whereby politics is taken away from the people, political parties are taken away from the people, and unless one becomes a sycophant, he can never graduate to the next level. So we have our young men, particularly youths, who have not been able to cross the line. And that is the same with almost everybody who hasn't got the right connections. And that is why things have been going from bad to worse. And unless we put a system in place, unless we reclaim the system, we had a system when we started this democracy in 1999, which is hijacked by certain people. So in the absence of a system, it is going to be very, very difficult for anybody to do anything. People believe that because they are sincere, or because they are not corrupt, or because they mean well, they can be able to impact on the polity, whatever they do by way of policy, or whatever they want to implement by way of policy, must get rammed through the people. This is absolute nonsense. Unless you have the system that will respond. If the system will not respond, then it's going to be very, very difficult for anybody to do anything. So we need to have that system. It is not enough for anybody to say that, look, I am sincere, or I am not corrupt, or I mean well. I can do anything under the sun for people to be able to trust me. This is fallacious thinking. We need to have a system. When you have a system that is responsive to public policy, then that is the way that trust comes, but not the way we are living today, where everything is haphazard. People have lost confidence in everything. The state has also even lost confidence in itself. This is the situation we are right now.
Well, Right Honourable, we're going to have to take this on a little more closely because you have definitely raised some issues at this time. But we'll take a short break because we didn't get there in one day. How did we get here? And how do we get back after now? Well, thanks for staying with us. Honourable, so there was this meeting, and it's a plan to bring together so many political parties, chairmen of political parties, 12 from the last count that we have. And at the end of the day, the trust quotient that you talked about came from a deficiency of the political class. And now this is another, opinion, another suggestion, so to speak, another option, so to speak, of a mega party alternative to the prominent ones that we have on ground now. Question then is, how is this going to be different? How is it going to build this trust quotient among so many other things? How is the MC front planning to take on the challenges of this nation?
Well, I have been through all these parties, and I know how they operate. I know the people who have, over the time, taken over the parties. I know what they aim to achieve for themselves. I know their motivations and things and so forth. And I believe that most of them are in politics not for the sake of the nation, but for the sake of themselves. And it's very, very difficult for any political party to survive under any group of people that are in politics for just themselves. There are politicians and there are politicians. And for me, what I believe is that everything has a mechanism and everything has a system, within which within which things operate. We have, in a democracy, we have political parties. And these political parties are supposed to be agents of change. Apart from recruitment of leadership, political parties must also educate its members, which these parties have never been doing. I know that, you know that, and they know that. And it is necessary for me, given the way and manner that democracy has come to us, you know as well as I do, that democracy has never been historically determined here. And since that is the case, some people need to know something. You must educate people to know why it is operated and where it is expected to take people to. It's not simply ruled by civilians. There's a mechanism through which it operates. So for me, these kinds of contradictions must be identified. Identify them, which some of us have done, honestly. Identify the contradictions, identify the principal contradictions, and even the principal aspects of the contradictions. This is well known, you know, system theory in political science, you know. It's well known, it's not a difficult thing. Once you do that, once you identify the principal contradiction in anything, you can be able to solve it, you know, in a very small time. And most things you see are related, but you begin to attempt to correct them in different ways. Whereas when you correct one, which is the principal contradiction, all the rest, no matter how many they are, they begin to follow suit. That is the way you do things. And up till now, successive administrations have been operating in a manner that suggested that the advisors that are being appointed are not being listened at. So for us in the NC front, National Consultative Front, we have discussed all of these problems and have accepted that unless we put things in perspective, particularly our political parties, because right in our political parties are the key with which we can open a chapter, a successful chapter in this country. If we use our political parties, we get them right, there is nothing on earth Nigerians cannot enjoy. But we have already obliterated all the good things that the political parties are supposed to confer on us, particularly internal democracy. Internal democracy is pervasive. Its obliteration is pervasive. Let me make an analogy with the health sciences. In the health sciences, you have what people call diabetes, type 2 diabetes, which is characterized by insulin resistance. In your ordinary biology, insulin is what escorts glucose in the system to the cells. And because of insulin resistance, the inability of the glucose to get into the cells, because the cells are filled up by junk, mostly sugar. Over time, you know, people begin to develop hypertension, coronary heart disease, kidney failure, Alzheimer's disease, hyperlipidemia, fatty liver disease, blindness, you know, every disease under the sun. You know, the organs of human beings become under attack because of insulin resistance. That is what happens to any polity that obliterates internal democracy. And we may not have all the time it takes for me to be able to explain these dynamics, but simply put, you know, each political party, when it is going to contest for elections, engages in what is called primary election. And the mechanism is that anybody who wants to contest will come and expose himself to the members of the party, and so that they are able to know him and assess him or her. And after such process, people now are able to assess and elect whoever they want. You see, it is in that competition is very, very important. Its outcome is very, very important. What that means is that, you know, the intellect counts.
Right.
Today, in this country, in all these political parties, you find out that the basis for the emergence of candidates is sycophancy or money. You either buy or you become a sycophant. And this does not allow, you know, the intellect to flourish. That is why you see that the political parties have not grown. Even the economic system is suffering. It has not grown. In the last 20 years, what we are seeing is quantitative changes in the economy. But there has not been any qualitative change in the people. The social system has become atrophied. This is manifested by all you are noticing, all you are witnessing, from banditry to insurgency. Insurgency has escalated. Banditry, when in the last 5 years, banditry has escalated from the northwest to the north central, and both parts of the north central. If you go to Niger State on this hand, Nasarawa State on the other hand. So all of these are escalating. People cannot travel from place to place without fear. Everybody fears to be on the road. So these things are escalating. And unless we give premium to a system where recruitment of leadership will be on a competitive basis, which will now give you competent people to serve you as leaders or to serve us as leaders. You see, these kinds of things are very, very important. We must look at them, and we must not take them for granted. Those who are committing these atrocities, asphyxiating the political parties, are enjoying it. And they are the people that have thrown us into this situation.
Well, speaking of the recruitment process,
society hailed them.
Right. If I can just, latch onto the recruitment process which you referenced, because, looking at that presser which was released from the NC front, saying that, this is a conscious effort to provide a credible, ideological, mega-political party alternative to rescue Nigeria from the predatory and disastrous grip of the ruling political leadership. And you mentioned specifically the APC and the PDP. Earlier on in the conversation, you talked about a certain hijacking since 1999, and you should know better because you've been in government. So does that imply that ever since 1999, the leadership recruitment process has not really provided or resulted in effective, efficient, or appropriate leader for Nigeria?
You see, after the elections in 1999, almost 80% of all elections have been faulty due to the way and manner the political parties are reduced to. The political parties have been reduced to just platforms for the contest of elections, and for those who control the political parties to recruit whoever they like to serve anywhere. And that is why today you see that the polity is not vibrant. If you compare, for example, let's take the National Assembly, for example. You cannot compare the National Assembly of 1999, with all its imperfections, with successive national assemblies, because there has been this attitude from 1999 by especially those in the executive arm, that when the potential for the legislature to take the executive arm to account was noticed, conscious effort was made by them to dwarf or to destroy the legislature. And the tool they chose to implement that was the political parties, by denying the opportunity for free and fair elections within the parties. They have asphyxiated the parties in such a way that unless they like a particular person, he can never win an election in the party or in the parties. And so they populated the legislature with as many people as possible to do their bidding. And that is what has been taking place since then. So it's very difficult for legislators to sit down and serve independently, because whatever you do, particularly if it's going to be against the government of the day, whether it is the federal government or the state, they will tell you that, look, will not give you ticket again. Even the nomenclature has changed. Nobody asks who wins a primary election today. People rather ask who is given the ticket. So we have virtually lost this democracy. So what we are trying to do is to bring these political parties together and the actors that have incorporated them, engage, intellectually, and accept that we cannot run political parties the way they are being run by PDP and APC. We must operate by the norms.
Okay, so, but Honorable, if I could just jump in.
Only way.
Okay, now, yes, you've given that analogy, but the thing is, if you say you can't operate like the PDP and the APC, these parties still have what they refer to as the structure to, quote unquote, win elections or to bring themselves back into power. How is this NC front going to be any different?
Well, you see, first of all, the fallacy we always go into is to always emphasize winning election. Look, we have a country that is not being run well, and we know the problems, and we are trying to get away from the problems. We must face these problems, and it's not all about winning election. It's about forming proper political parties that will be able to assist, support governance, good governance. And if we don't start, we are late. And if we don't start now, when are we going to start? Are you telling me that these parties are being operated the way political parties should be operated? So it's not about winning elections. It's about, resetting our country so that we can reverse all of these negative things, negative questions bedeviling us.
So, but
this is why we are doing these things.
How do you reset the system if you're not in that position to carry out that reset?
Well, everybody is supposed to to contribute. I'm doing my duty. My duty, I've been through the system. I know what the system suffers from. You know, I have the ability, I have the understanding, and I'm just doing my duty. So others should also do their duty.
Well, one of the things that's been proposed by the NC Front is it's either we have a new constitution or we don't have elections. That's the way it seems to be put out. How do you intend to achieve that? You said the other time that it's really difficult to have governors who are independent-minded without their governors. And there has been so much talk over time about the defectiveness of the 1999 Constitution that we're operating now. So what's the pathway to that new Constitution being proposed by the NC Front without the National Assembly?
Well, you see, the issue of Constitution is different. Let us discuss electoral matters. You know, I believe that stiff sanctions must be imposed on anybody, no matter how highly placed, anybody who obstructs elections within the political parties. Each political party has a time when it elects its officers. It's called Congress. During these congresses, elections take place for people who will run the activities of the political parties. These elections must be allowed to take place. And the elections must take place, you know, within the parameters of fairness and freedom. Any governor or whoever it is who obstructs this must be sanctioned by the law. Then primary elections to contest for general elections also. No primary elections must take place in any government house in this country. Primary elections must take place either at the headquarters of the political party in question or at designated places where the political party feels elections can take place freely and fairly. You know, anybody who obstructs this must go through a very must go through sanctions, very stiff sanctions. And these things we must look at. We must not take these things for granted. We are taking things lightly. That is why we are having bad governance. So we have to look at these things very, very critically. The issue of constitution, you know that a lot of people have been calling for the restructuring of the country. And I don't fault them. I believe that after many, many years living together, it's not bad to look at look at the basis within which we live together, and see whether things are right or wrong, whether it's working, whether the system is working for everybody or is not working for everybody. You know, sincere living means that we must look after one another.
Right.
And I believe it is our responsibility as human beings, you know, to do whatever it takes to help others live. And I believe that once there are cries from certain quarters that they are not comfortable, you know, we must look at the basis, you know, the basis within which we live.
Right. Honorable.
And, I believe that we can do with some restructure.
Right.
And
you know,
there are
when
a lot
we
of
talk
things
about
that can be done to better governance.
Okay, well, some of the things you suggested in that presser was that, Nigerians should resist a new election without a new people's constitution. And I believe you're referring to the 2023 election. And you said that without a people's constitution, rather, that can guarantee biometric voter accreditation, electronic voting, counting and transmission of results, as well as diaspora voting, as well as other issues which perhaps you will unveil in the coming days. So 2 quick issues to raise. If you say that this is not really about winning elections, clearly you're saying that this is not ahead of 2023. Am I right?
Well, what I'm saying is that we should not be putting the cart before the horse. That Nigeria must have proper political parties. Even if we are going to contest for elections, it does not mean we must jettison what we believe must be in place in our political parties. We must not abandon due process in our political parties, no matter what is at stake. And everything you see, you have enumerated there, these are our wishes, things we want to see happen. There are people who don't want to see those things you enumerated happen. We have them. It's a Herculean task. It's not as simple as that. So it's a process that have to be very rigorous, that will involve consultations with so many other people. We are not doing things alone. We're involving a lot of people who we believe will be sympathetic to this cause. This is all in our effort to better our country.
The move thinking, okay, this is part of the jostle for 2023. But when you say that the major, what you're looking to achieve first is to have proper political parties, that is clearly a dent on the APC and the PDP. And those have been vehicles that you have also been a part of. So is that a dent?
Well, you can you can call it anything. All I know is that I have been through these parties. I know the way they operate. I know the way they have been subjugating people, to various difficulties whenever people want to contest for elections. I know what is happening in all the parties. And you know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. These parties are not operating are not being operated the way they should be operated. You know that. I know that. Everybody knows that.
Well, we could go on and on this conversation, right, Honorable, but, you're definitely asking Nigerians to have a rethink of so many things that we have done over the past 21 years and counting. But at this time, we can only expect that this nation, everyone, as you said, will put all hands on deck to make it better. Right Honorable Galina Abba, former Speaker, House of Representatives, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts this morning.
Thank you very much. You are welcome.
All right, we do have some breaking news coming through now.
This is Channels Television's breaking news.
Well, we understand that gunmen suspected to be kidnappers have attacked the Federal College of Forestry in Kaduna State, abducting several students. The college is located a few meters away from the Nigerian Defense Academy in Mando area of the state. Confirming this incident, the spokesperson of the Kaduna State Police Command, Muhammad Jalige, did tell Channels TV that the attackers invaded the college located at Mando area in the outskirts of Kaduna metropolis at about 3 a.m. on Friday and abducted some students. He did, however, say that the exact number of students is not sure yet, so they hope to confirm that. But he also explained that security operatives have been mobilized to the college upon hearing about the attack and were able to secure the remaining students. He went on to say that the investigation is ongoing to ascertain the actual number of students that were abducted with a view to tracking down the gunmen and rescue the victims. So, as you heard, gunmen suspected to be kidnappers have attacked Federal College of Forestry in Kaduna State, abducting several students. So we're hoping to get the exact number of students, and hopefully police will trace and see what happened. So this, again, raising some security questions concerning what's happening.
I recall it was exactly 2 weeks ago we broke the news of the kidnapping in Jangibe. We said it was going to be a long weekend. So we do hope that this ends well and as fast as possible. Just to take a few tweets that you've sent in. This one from Zizu NG concerning leadership, saying it's indeed pathetic that once our leaders get out of government, the veil is then lifted off their eyes. And, he goes on.
Which is what I hope, he propounded that theory in the opening, saying people tend to believe them when they leave government. But Henry equally weighs in. Henry says, government officials have ever treated people's opinion with levity. Well, is it have never treated people's opinion with levity? The challenging negative perception was identified early and officials told to identify and work with faces that people trust. Sadly, bureaucracy led while wholesome advocacy trailed. He says we still have some work to do. That's why he says work day.
Work day.
Well,
oh, right.
Work. Oh, okay.
Work day. I see.
Well, Nasidi's comment is about the COVID-19 vaccine. PTF is responding to the issues, but generally, these vaccines have some issues that warrant further investigation. I guess we can begin with the Africa CDC report. Well, that's the show today. Thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and please keep safe.
He's Ayo Makinde. I'm Kayode Okikele.
We'll see you again next week, 7 a.m., same time. Have a good one. I'm Chamberlain Uso.